So, hello everyone, welcome. Uh, my name is Krishna Bensal, and I am the founder and chairman of Indian Community Outreach. Just a lot of people know about Indian Community Outreach, but since there are a lot of new people, let me quickly give you a brief overview of what this is, and then we'll get to very quickly on our important topic. So, Indian Community Outreach is an outreach program that was founded in 2013, and it was really brought in with working with Mayor Fadel at that time. We worked very closely on for a motive in there, and it clearly says educate, integrate, and empower. It's a non-profit organization, non-partisan work for people. Isha, can you change the slide, please? Keep on changing the slides.
Hold on, it's not letting me. Okay, it worked.
Okay. So it is working really to integrate Indian American and all actually communities, bringing them together, educating them, and especially with the new generation or new immigrants. And we have been very successful. The core thing is education. And as part of education, Conversations is a series we have been holding many town halls every year for many years. And some other programs we have. We work with the business owners here, help them from bring the economic advantage. India Day is our flagship event that we host every year in August. Unfortunately, this year it's going to be a little different. It cannot be in the way it was. Isha, can you please keep on changing screen? Yes, and we give out scholarships, a lot of scholarships, and many other programs. And we have been supported by our board. We'll just quickly glance through the pictures. This is our board that supports us. We have an advisory board after that. These are really the people who give us a lot of time, help us. And then we have a core team of people who help us all the time in helping us bringing these events to you. So with that, let's get back to really what we are here for today. What I'll do is I will first, we are here for a very important topic. It's a topic as it suggests from last 3 months, we all have been going through a completely abnormal phase. And more than us, our children and youths, they have been going through it, and we have to talk about it. We have to see what's going on in there. So we are gathered here with experts in the field who have done a lot and who have been doing a lot, working with children, working with youths, dealing with stress and all these things. So we'd like to bring in their thoughts, ask them questions, and go from there. We have collected a lot of questions already, but we will be taking more questions. People who are logged in, they can type in their questions in the Q&A, and we'll pick them from there or in the chat window, and we'll do that. And Isha here is helping us. She's our youth lead, youth coordinator, and she's helping me with carrying forward the activity. So with that, let's quickly do some introductions. Let's talk to our hosts and see who they are. I mean, they are very accomplished. They have done so much. And in no order, I'll just go with how they're showing up on my screen. So with that, I'll start with Kamala. Ms. Kamala, I've known Kamala for many years, leads Kids Matter organization. So Kamala, why don't you talk about what you do and how do you really interact with our younger generation?
Say that again one more time, Krishna? That you want me to speak about?
What do you do with Kids Matter and how do you interact with our younger generation? And before we start with the real Q&A.
Yes. So thank you, Krishna, for having and inviting me and Kids Matter on this panel. We're honored to be here tonight, so thank you for that. At Kids Matter, we serve 45,000 youth throughout DuPage and Will County, and our whole mission is to basically empower kids to make healthy choices and say no to destructive choices. And we are all about empowering kids so that they can have fulfilling and full lives. We work with school districts 203 and 204. We also work with many partners throughout the community. Adam Russo, who's on this panel tonight, his organization, Edgewood Clinical Services, is one of the organizations that we work with. We also work with Linden Oaks, and we also work with Fox Valley. So we're honored to be here tonight, and thank you for the invitation, Krishna.
Thank you, Kamala. And as you mentioned, Adam, why don't we just talk to Adam? I mean, I've known Adam for many years, doing wonderful job in our community. Adam, Just please.
Yes, no, thanks for having me. I'm the founder and CEO of Edgewood Clinical Services. Edgewood is an outpatient behavioral health practice. We have 2 locations in Naperville, one in Plainfield, one in Lisle, and then in September opening in Darien. We have about 90 providers, social workers, counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists on staff, and we treat the whole gamut of outpatient behavioral health needs. About half of our practice is kids. We serve about 6,000 total individuals, so about half of them are kids under 18. And I stayed active in the community for a long time. I spoke at TEDx a few years ago about the importance of failure and wrote a book called Unwritten Rules, really about how as adults can we start preparing our kids for uncertainty and how to deal with uncertainty. And when this type of pandemic comes up, this is kind of the meat of what I'm trying to talk about. Things don't go the way we expect, and the ones who are best prepared to manage the unexpected and adapt accordingly are going to be successful, not only in a tangible sense, but in an emotional sense in the future. So in my view, this is a great opportunity for parents to talk about how to help their kids succeed in that way.
Thank you, Adam. I'm glad that you are here. We have Dr. Vijay. Dr. Vijay is not a stranger with us. She has participated in past on the similar topics with us. So welcome, Dr. Vijay. We'd like to hear from you. You are muted, Dr. Vijay. You're still muted, Dr. Vijay, you're muted. Can you please unmute yourself? Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bansal, and it's wonderful to be here with all of you. I'm a clinical psychologist with practices in Naperville, Illinois, and downtown Chicago. And my practice is under the name Self-Improvement Through Awareness. I see a lot of adolescents, young adults, and adults in my practice. We are about 3 of us in my practice. It's a small practice. I also do a number of outreach programs. Once a month, I do mental health awareness talks in the community, and we've been collecting some data. Majority of my, in the last 5 years, the number of Indians who started coming for services in my practice has gone from about 20% to 60%. So that is very, very interesting. It gives me a great opportunity to hear them out, talk to parents and kids. I'm very happy to be here and very happy to meet all the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vijay. And last but not the least, Pramila ji. Pramila leads Sanjeevani for you. They do a lot of work. Pramila, please tell us about yourself and Sanjeevani.
Thank you, Krishna. Thank you, ICO, and nice to meet everyone here in the panel group. Sanjeevani is 5 years old, and it provides free advocacy, support, and help for anyone going through mental health concerns. This can be adults, youth, or senior citizens. We're also partners with the Stevenson High School, which is one of the largest high schools in District 1 to 125. We have fielded many calls from youth for mental health concerns, and I think one of the big discussions should be that parents are equally, or at least 70% responsible for the mental wellness of any child or teenager. So looking forward to all of the questions, and hopefully we can help in any way. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Pramila. And so this is an these are interesting times, unprecedented times. So this is our first in many of the forums that you're going to be seeing. And our promise that instead of you coming to us, we all will now come to you via electronic media or the social media, whatever you want to call it. We'll be working with this. So let's start with the core of it. We talked about stress. Let me ask from you, what is really stress, and how do we pick on science in stress in children? Because I mean, we need to have the base built. So let me ask you, whoever wants to jump in first, welcome.
I believe stress in children is any kind of feeling which disrupts their day-to-day living, as a student or as a child. So it could be, stress in school, academics, parental pressure, friends issues, boyfriend, girlfriend breakup, inability to be cool in school, any of such actions which disrupts day-to-day living for a period of at least a week or 2 weeks can be termed as stress. But clinically, I know it has a different kind of a definition.
Any other technical definitions, or how do we really identify?
Stress is a normal part of human existence, and actually all living things experience stress. It's not only normal, it is essential for life. Stress warns us, it makes us aware that there is something that we need to take care of, that there's an action we need to take care of. Now, once the action is taken care, then the stress goes down, and it has a whole physiological, psychological response that our body, brain, and mind it leads to. And when stress is chronic, that's when it becomes problematic. When there is no solution to a problem, that's when stress becomes a problem. For example, COVID. It's extremely uncertain. We don't know what to do. There's a lot of information that is contradictory, and we are all stuck at home. A lot of adjustments have to be made. Parents have to work, parents have to teach, parents have to take care of home. But there is no end in sight. So that's what leads to a stress that has no resolution right now. So a whole different type of resources, mental, emotional resources are called upon to manage this type of stress.
Thank you. I'll move on to the next one, and again to build the base on who we are and what our panelists do. I'll ask that all of you do a lot to ensure that children are keeping well, and they are in good mental health, especially during all the, you have been doing this especially during this time. Can you describe, let's just a little bit, what all you have been doing to, I know you stated some of it during your introduction, but a little bit on like specific to the situation in last 3 months, what have been your actions before we start into that real Q&A?
So Krishna, one of the very important things is, we talk of stress, we talk of mental health concerns, but community, people, children need to know what are the symptoms. How do I identify those? And as Dr. Vijay mentioned, these could be different kind of emotions, different kind of symptoms from a child to a teenager to a student. So most important thing is that our community be aware of what exactly is a mental health concern. So generally, psychology and mental health is about expressing emotions. And emotion is basically motion which has to be, emotion which is energy which has to be expressed. And if a child, if a teenager is not expressing that energy and is suppressing, then that can cause a lot of havoc between in their, in the physical demeanor or in their otherwise academic life. So I think most important is to have the awareness, both for the parents and of course the children.
Yes. Krishna, if I would just say, like, the Kids Matter did a stress survey in 2017 to all the 7th graders and all the 10th graders in 203 and 204. And what we found from that stress survey was simply this. At the time, in 2017, 61% of all teens and youth across the US were experiencing stress on a daily basis, and it impacted their daily lives. What we found out about our 7th graders is that 71% of all of our 7th graders in 203 and 204 are experiencing stress on a daily basis. What we found out about our 10th graders was that 77% of our 10th graders are experiencing stress and anxiety on a daily basis, to the point that it's paralyzing them where they can't perform their best in school, or they can't perform at home or have certain relationships. So Kids Matter went on, we were looking for a curriculum that could help kids with stress. And we purchased a Harvard research developed and research-based curriculum called Resilient Youth. And we just got done training all the health teachers or PE teachers in 203 this summer on it. It's going to be implemented into their health classes this fall. But the reason why I chose this curriculum above all the other curriculums is because it literally teaches the students what stress is, what it looks and feels like, the scientific definition, as well as the psychological and physiological definitions, because we have 7th graders and grade school kids on the survey who couldn't really identify that they were having a stress and a panic attack. They described their feelings like sweaty palms, heart racing, but they thought they were having a heart attack. They didn't even know that what they were having was like a panic attack. So I think we need to educate our youth on what is stress, what's it look and feel like, so that when it happens to them, they can identify it. But then more importantly, we need to give them coping skills, healthy coping skills, to deal with stress and anxiety. And that's what this curriculum does. So I just think it's important that we not only identify, but then we give them skills, which I know everyone on this panel is working to do just that.
And that's what we've been doing, you know, over the course of the over the past couple of months has been, you know, you talk, you know, with the stress and uncertainty that people are experiencing, especially kids. The hardest part for them is, you know, all these things aren't happening that they want, whether it's, you know, everything from just school in general to their spring sports seasons to graduations to prom to, you know, you name it, you know, family I mean, all these different things that we would define as meaningful suddenly got crossed out. And so, you know, in the short term, what we've been, you know, a lot of us have really been using is just from the dialectical behavior therapy context of radical acceptance. How do you start accepting things that aren't fair, not right, completely, you know, just totally outside of what you would believe to be a normal part of living, but yet accept them as fact. And so the quicker that we can accept the things that don't fit in our lives, the more we're able to better adjust and move forward. And that's a kind of a temporary short-term solution to that we've been trying to just help kids work through, because there's really nothing anyone can do. So trying to reframe the perspective has been a place to start.
Adam, that's so right. So essentially, to add to it, the coping skills, to say we have to teach our children or to understand, you have to accept rejection as you accept, you know, accolades. You know, it's okay to get a D. It's okay to get a breakup. It's okay to be not the cool one. It's okay to be not okay. It's very important to have that coping mechanism.
Yeah. One of the things, Krishna, that I would like to talk about a little bit is that Kids Matter manages the crisis text line for DuPage County. And what we saw on the crisis text line from March through May, we literally saw an increase we saw increases in a lot of things, but I'm going to talk about like loneliness and isolation was up 35%. Depression was up 65%. Anxiety was up 72%. Physical and emotional abuse was up 25%. We saw a huge increase in the volume, the number of students that were using the crisis text line from March through May. But obviously from that, we could tell that there was a lot of grief, what Adam was speaking to. Grief was up immensely on the crisis text line. And I'm not talking, it was the grief of losing maybe a grandmother or an aunt or something, but there was a lot of grief with, I didn't get to go to prom. I didn't get to go to my graduation. There was a lot of grief around things that were normal senior activities that just didn't happen, for whether you were a senior in high school or you were a senior in college. There was a lot of grief around the activities and anxiety around that they didn't get to have a normal senior year. And I just wanted to, you know, Adam brought that up, and I wanted to say that that became clear on the crisis text line.
Thank you, and that answers one of the next questions I was to ask, that what are really the factors and triggers, so that is right really in. So let's move on to an interest of time, since I have a lot of questions here, and we can come back to some of this discussion a little later. We are really, last 3 months, and I keep on coming back to last 3 months because COVID-19 or this pandemic has really changed a lot of things, or I mean, moved a lot of things how they used to work. So especially for our youth and children, what are some of the practical suggestions to help children cope up with stress during this pandemic? I mean, what is the best thing that kids and teens can do to keep a healthy mindset through all of this, what resources out there for them to learn to cope during these changing times. So I'm trying to lump in multiple questions, the similar questions. So how can they deal with it?
So Krishna, we did an interview with several youth in the past month, and what the millennials and the Gen Z, they said they have to come up with a movement called reparenting. So what that means is that they have to behave, or they have to take it upon themselves as young adults to move past the patterns established by their parents, by their grandparents, and evolve into something new. So, whatever has been, the emotions, the way they see their parents feeling it, the way they see their parents, their grandparents, emoting it, feeling it, and expressing is how they are conditioned to do that. So now they're breaking away, I don't want any taboo in about expressing my fears. I don't want any taboo about expressing my sadness. If I have sadness, I have grief, I have joy, I have a right, I have a different way of expressing that. So yes, this is one of the ways our Gen Z is trying to understand and cope up with, bringing in their own trends. So they said there are 5 basically human feelings: fear, anger, sadness, joy, and sexual. So again, for parents, it may be different because they don't want to see their child be sad. So they suppress any sadness in them. They also want to suppress the joy because they know it is short-lived. Sexual, for especially South Asian Indian community, is an absolute no-no. So when they see this kind of an atmosphere at home, this is how the child grows, and that is what they're trying to break up now.
Yeah, and let's talk more specific. And you're right. I mean, you did this in last 1 month, but more specific to this pandemic situation, because people are a lot anxious, and there are a lot of youths also logged on to this call. So it's just not parents' perspective; it's both. And whoever are logged in, I'll just make an appeal. Please keep on typing your questions in chat or Q&A, and Isha's collecting all of them. So please go ahead.
So Krishna, I would say if a child has questions about this pandemic, it's fear, please ask those questions to your parents, to your friends, to a trusted one, to Kids Matter. They need to have all of their questions answered. Nothing should be hidden from them. If it's, someone has contracted COVID, you're scared, they might die. Yes, we have to let them know. Look, this is a fearful situation. We are trying to deal with it. I have to be honest. What kids are expecting is honesty and right answers. And if they have a fear, what we would say, hey, go to a trusted person, let them know, I am fearful. Can you help me overcome this fear? Can you give me the reassurance that, whatever is happening will pass? And can you also teach me how do I cope up with this fear? So this is, let the youth ask the questions.
Yeah, and those are really good points. That kids have to be able to ask those questions and be able to engage in what's on their minds. And then to kind of add to it on a very I think day-to-day side, kids, and we saw it so much before this COVID started, was we were already, just a few months ago, we were having debates about, are kids overscheduled? Do we have them involved in too many things? Are we pushing them too hard? Are they in too many clubs or too many sports or too many study groups, or, everything was too many this, right? Now all of a sudden it disappeared. And so you had these kids who basically every minute, oftentimes for 12, 14 hours a day, all of a sudden weren't doing anything. And so what happens is they were kids for so long have been relying on the external structure to basically tell them where they should go and what they should do. Now that rug got pulled out from under them, and a lot of them found themselves kind of wandering and not knowing what to do with themselves. And so, many kids got lost in video games and screens and social media, and oftentimes that just made it worse. It makes the stress worse and anxiety worse, like zillions of studies support. But in the end, it practically means, how can kids internally start trying to figure out what should my own schedule be? What time should I be trying to go to bed? What time should I be trying to wake up? Are there things I should try to be doing during the day? Whether it's, going for, taking the dog for a walk, or reading a book, or setting aside, whatever time for screens, and, are they, and then the big X factor is, are they able to engage with friends socially? Because obviously, depending on different family situations, some parents are way more against that than others. And so how do they navigate who, what friends they're able to hang out with versus not, for how long, where can they come inside? Is it always outside? Right. So all the structure that we used to be, just harping on for so long about how they're over involved. Well, this is the product of that. When we over control kids' lives, they don't know how to do it themselves. And so as parents, we have to be able to help guide them into trying to figure out how to do that as well.
So Adam, a
One of
lot
the
of
things
calls
that
a lot of calls which we got with, they said, we are scared of making decisions, as you said. Should I go to friend A? Should I take up a video? What should I do? I'm really scared of making decisions. Oh, sorry, go ahead, please.
one of see, I have my sample might be a little bit skewed because I speak to people who come into my office. And what I find is that helping the kids necessarily involves parents. So it has to be, when we want to help kids with this, whatever the consequences are that came from this pandemic, we have to include the parents in that. Now, for example, one of the things I try to teach them is to have family meetings. And so, of course, it's very important to figure out how to set up these family meetings. So the parents sit together and say, okay, how are we going to set up our household during this pandemic? And both of us have to work, if that's the case. Both of us have to work, the kids have to do schoolwork, we have to take care of the house. So how do we go about this? Once the parents come to some kind of an understanding, the kids join them, and the parents, all they do is to tell them the purpose of us meeting is to figure out how to work through this pandemic. And then they wait. They wait for the kids to start talking about it and take that input and then say, okay, let's each one of us come up with our schedules by ourselves. The parents will tell, I do want you to include study time and whatever else the kids have to do. And then you go your respective ways and then write down the routines, come back and talk about it. And the way to set up those meetings is that it has to have a positive tone. It is not to, I see that devolve into criticism. The parents quickly start asking, did you do your homework? Did you do this? Did you do that? So I have to really take them through steps to say, what is the first thing you say? What is the second thing you say? What is the last thing you say? You can only give feedback, negative feedback, one feedback in one meeting. And between one meeting and the next, if some negative stuff comes up, you're going to say, okay, I'll bring it up in the meeting. I'm not going to talk about, unless it is urgent, of course. So that's one thing I teach parents and children to do, to develop a good structure for family meeting. And then the next thing is to develop a good routine. The routine has, we know that having a routine is a stress buster. So if I know what I'm going to do in general, not rigid, my stress is lesser. So within reason, with some level of flexibility built into it, we have a routine. And if we don't do the best, it's okay. You can be perfectionistic. And the parents have to model, and then I teach them how to model to the kids how to problem solve. So I want the mom to problem solve aloud. Oh, this is what is happening, so I think I'm going to do this, that. So aloud, so that the kids can hear it. And they know that they can also do something like that. So, so I teach family meetings, I teach how to develop a routine, I teach parents how to model, and of course I teach resiliency skills. So those are the things that I teach when I have kids come and parents. Much of my sessions, 95% are teletherapy sessions. so I can have all of them right there, and that helps.
One of the questions that just came up, as Adam, you mentioned, the kids used to have full schedule. They were working very hard. Getting even a minute out was difficult. And now suddenly there is a huge gap. I mean, there is a, how do they deal with boredom? I mean, that's really, and how do they really in this situation have a sense of accomplishment? What can they do? I mean, of course, they have to keep healthy. We talked, I mean, you mentioned about that they need to have a schedule and all that, but really they need to be able to cope up with this, a lot of extra time they never had. I mean, even us, we didn't have that time. And suddenly we are finding a lot of time, and I mean, it's a change for us. And we are trying to adjust, but for children, it's even difficult. So how can they really accommodate with this or deal with this and still feel that they have accomplished something?
Well, you bring up a good point in that, is that, you know, culturally today, we don't really teach kids how to be bored. You know, it's just not something that happens. You know, the advent of, you know, again, technology is fantastic on one hand, but on the other, you know, 20, you know, not to be, date myself, but, you know, 20 years ago or so, you know, kids would just have to kind of sit home and do nothing sometimes, right? I mean, that was just kind of what culture was. Now there, you know, we carry more and more of an expectation that there's a screen to look at or something to be entertained by. So kids were not trained to be able to sit and literally do nothing, because they that in and of itself creates anxiety for them now, because they just don't know what to do with it. Then the second part of it is that, okay, so now you know, to what you were saying of feeling of accomplishment, that now shifts into how do we change our expectations? Because our expectations before all this was, you know, be a top performer in whatever it is that you're trying to do, work as hard as you can, be involved as much as possible. While we obviously still want to try our best in whatever it is we're doing, since we're doing less, our expectations have to shift lower. You know, if you were going to be the lead in the play and now there's no play, does that mean you're a bad actor? Right? So we have to reframe that a little bit. Just because there's no play or no sport or no test or no recital or whatever the case is, doesn't mean we're bad at what we're doing, but we have to now value the practice, right? How do we value that growth mindset and being able to keep working at something that we were good at or that we found value in or that we enjoyed, but at the same time not get the external validation from the applause or the test score or whatever the case is, but be able to internally make that good enough. And again, for a lot of kids, they play for the external reinforcement. And so this is, again, an opportunity to create an internal reinforcement that they are really good at what they're doing, regardless of whether or not there's an audience there or someone there to clap for them or pat them on the back. And it's up to us, though, to reframe those expectations. Just because the environment shifts doesn't mean that the principles of practice, hard work, doing your best change. It's just the way that it's going to be communicated and played out is going to change.
Yeah.
Adam, I'm just going to add to it to say, you know, again, you mentioned, you know, we have to be role models, in the sense parents have to be role models. If parents have a positive stance to say, hey, this is such a wonderful time during pandemic, I'm able to work at home, be around with my children, that positive vibe will go to the child to say, hey, I'm so lucky that these 3 months I'm able to stay at home, be with my parents. So it all comes into what the child is seeing, and then they can adapt to the boredom or nothing to do. Let them be a kid for once.
Yeah, I want to chime in as well, Krishna. I think that what I have seen even in my own neighborhood, and it makes me happy to see what I'm seeing, is I am watching families take walks after dinner at night. I'm watching families have dinner together every single night, which maybe families had dinner 2 or maybe 3 times a week if we were lucky, right? I'm also seeing kids in our neighborhood like play sand volleyball. I never would have seen kids get together and play sand volleyball on just odd hours of the day or time, right? I'm just seeing things that I haven't seen in probably 20 years happen in my community that I live in, the subdivision that I live in, and I'm elated to see that families are taking bike rides and taking walks, and kids are playing together outside in a sport. I'm seeing tons of volleyball nets being set up in backyards and badminton, and I'm seeing a lot of that happen in my community. And I think like Adam said, and like Ms. Kumar said, we've got to reset the expectations and teach these kids how to live without all these schedules being filled up.
That's really interesting. In fact, while we were growing up, it used to be a different time. We used to all spend a lot of time outdoor. The stress level, everything was different. But one specific question that came in, and it's interesting. How do we get teens off the phone gently in these tough times? They're so much into Snapchat and TikTok, etc. I mean, so how can we motivate them to do other things, exercise, go out, play? And especially with social distancing and masks on and everything else.
Yeah, I think that's the technology piece is always a fight either way, especially now because their social lives are now so tied to it because they're not really seeing their kids and seeing their friends and, you know, the places that they usually would. So this is where I think for parents, while trying to be motivating for kids to make, you know, the right decisions is certainly the better way to go. It's also, you know, the time where I think as a parent, if you were ignorant to technology and chalked up not being able to monitor kids' screen time and manage their screens to, you know, I don't get technology, you know, I'll just kind of have them figure it out. This is kind of the time where you have to learn it. There's too many, you know, apps out there now that can help parents manage kids' screen times if the kids aren't doing it themselves, that it's incumbent on parents to figure it out. You know, there's just so many out there. I'm not going to, you know, whether it's in the, you know, in the operating systems alone, you know, with Apple Screen Time, or there's apps called RPAC and various other ones that you can, you know, monitor app by app. You can do group by group. You can set all day, no screen, some of the day. I mean, there's tons of things you can do, but as a parent, you got to get invested in learning it. And so while it's great to start setting off good expectations, like, look, you know, today, you know, you got to read an hour and a half today, not screens all day, especially since you're not hanging out with your friends, that kind of thing. But then it's up to a parent to just stick with it, be that thorn in the kid's side and just bother them. And then, you know, if they're not doing it, then it's up to the parent to set the limit and have the kids respond. But we can't be ignorant to how technology works and how much control we really do have as parents.
I'll give an example. Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Vijay.
One of the things that needs to happen is if technology is here to stay, there's not much we can do. However, if we want to shape that, I think we need to start early, right from childhood. We have to start way back then. And instead of taking away the phones and screens, it is important to add things. So it's important to, you know, go for a walk, play board games, watch a movie together. So it's more not taking away, but adding other things. Reading together helps. Again, it's good to start early, but, you know, pick up a book and everybody reads together. That I have seen helps. I know people who, for example, during this pandemic, when we are home, we are going to learn this game. We are going to watch this director's movies. So they set things up so that it's like a challenge, and then once we are done, we are going to celebrate. Okay, we are done with this. Let's move on to something else. So certain celebratory atmosphere and celebrations also help to redirect from the screens.
One example, Krishna was trying to say, you know, a teenager called up that, you know, I have limited data on my phone and I have a curfew time of 9 p.m. We talked to the parent. I said, you know, you have set up a curfew. What about you and your spouse or the mom? You're on the phones, you know, till 11, 12 o'clock. Why don't you set an example? The parent, what they set their phones to limited data across all the family members. The curfew time applied to everyone. And trust me to say, Krishna, things so much improved for the whole family and especially the teenager.
Pre-COVID, the average time that teens were spending on their phone above and beyond homework time, or their phones or their iPads or their computers or their digital devices, regardless of what digital device, was 6.5 hours a day above and beyond homework. I'm waiting to get the new data out to see what the screen time looks like during COVID, because I can guarantee it's going to be astronomically higher than 6.5 hours. But it's a phenomena to the point where, like, we literally have kids who are sleeping with their digital devices, and not every time someone texts them, they're answering the text in the middle of the night. They're not going into deep sleep or deep enough to go into REM, and it's starting to affect brain development in our youth today. So I think that like we have, you know, alcohol addiction, or we have a certain drug addiction. I think if we can't get this technology under control with our teens, eventually we are going to have something called, you know, digital addiction, just like a gambler or drinking. So I hope that parents, please listen to what Adam and what the other doctors on this call said. We've got to control the amount of time our children are on these digital devices, because it's robbing them of their childhood.
Thank you. And I'm thinking that I don't know how what we used to do with our life. We didn't have all these. 6.5 hours. Wow. So I'm going to take a little bit of a tangent here, and although Isha here, she's a youth, her role today was more just assisting me. But since this is an important question, and I see all these kids being on there so much, so Isha, what do you think? How much we can get away? I was used. What is your and ask question if you need to, or if you like to.
Honestly, I won't lie. During this whole COVID quarantine part, I have my technology usage has gone up a lot, like a lot more than it had before, just because my whole schedule was changed. I don't have as much stuff to do. But I guess one thing that I tried to do every day was go outside. I would go on a run, or I'd like exercise or do something just so I can like get my mind off of like the screens and technology for at least a little bit of the day, and like actually like get like blood flowing through my brain and stuff. And another thing I did, I know it's like still technology, but instead of like constantly texting people or like Snapchatting, whatever, like we would have like group like FaceTime calls or like video chats instead. This way it's like more face-to-face talking, like as best as we can handle it. And that also helped with like the stress too, just because we were able to like talk to our friends again and just like have like a different like vibe happening in our like daily routine from what was happening before. So I guess that's just like some things that I did personally to try to get off of technology. But I know like a lot of people have been struggling with that. I just think that there's like a lot of other options that we have that can help with that. So yeah.
Isha, let me ask you a question. You're a teenager, COVID times have been very stressful. Do you have a support system, a go-to person or persons to say, if you have questions, you are concerned, stressed, depressed, parents, friends, peers, do you have that support system?
Yeah, I mean, if anything's bothering me, it depends what. If it's school, I'll go to my friends. I'll be like, help me with this assignment, please, like, teach me how to do this certain things. If it's something like, other than that, I'll talk to my parents and what's going on. But yeah, I think I do have a support system.
Yeah, that's great. And so to all the parents who are listening right now, it's so important that we teach our children as 911 for emergency. So each child also needs to have a support system, as Isha mentioned, academic, family, emotional, either friends or teachers or whosoever. But that support system is very important to have it handy, as 911 is for emergency. Thank you, Isha.
Well, thank you. And I'll come back to some of the other important questions here people have asked. And one of them has been, a couple of them have been really more focused on towards the anger and anxiety. In fact, one of them specific was how to deal with the anger and teen whose schedule is upset. There is no consensus and only conflict. The other one is a child with Asperger is getting bored, and we have seen emotional outburst and meltdown going up. So some of those things where like really the anger and anxiety is increasing. What can they do?
I think it's so hard with the anger and anxiety, because let's face it, I think it's probably true for all of us. I mean, this has been, it's really challenging. I mean, and I think, again, the hardest part is that, we see anger, we see anxiety, we see our kids being, uncomfortable, and, as parents, we want to make it better, but sometimes we can't really make things better, right? I mean, I think that's, again, we're talking about reframing expectations a little bit. Sometimes anxiety is just going to be high. And I think, for the past few months, anxiety's been high, and that just kind of is what it is. Now, I think the larger question is, when you think about things like anger and outbursts, that goes to, different kids have different needs, and they express themselves differently. So this question starts becoming, if a kid has been reactive in the past, just in general, this will definitely make them more reactive. I think then the question becomes, are we in the continuum of what we can consider acceptable, or do we kind of blow past that and now we're into, clinically significant, problematic, disruptive, like we were talking about before, as far as what was defined as far as stress goes, of things that are just beyond a certain level and beyond that level for an extended period of time, and how much is it interrupting their daily life when it comes to maybe friends or family relationships or whatever the case might be. So we have to judge that a little bit differently, but to also assume that we're going to get down to some type of pre-COVID normal anxiety when we don't even know if school's going to start yet. I think that's a little bit of a high expectation, and I think we've got to, as parents, start reading between the lines a little bit and assume, if we're like, I think most parents are worried about what is going to happen with school, because I got to go to work, and how is this going to play out? Am I going to be teacher and at the same time work at try to figure things out with work at home? But my kids are probably nervous about that too, because they probably want to go to school. But if they don't, are they going to get along? Am I going to get along with them? Am I going to miss, my friends' sports or other activities? So we've got to all of this stuff has to get redefined. We're not going to get to a place where, everyone is calm and happy. That's not happening right now. I think it's much more about, can we just stay within a continuum of acceptable and make that be okay? And then if it goes kind of beyond that, then how do we address it with professionals? And then if we get below that into a great place, let's just take the win and be happy with the day, and kind of take it day by day from there. So that would be kind of my initial reaction to that.
What I have a question, Krishna, and to all the parents. Why do our kids have to be always perfect? Why they have to be smiling, happy, joyful, pleasing personality? They're normal human beings. Why can't we think of like that? If they're angry, it's okay. There's a healthy way of expressing the anger. If they're anxious, if they're upset, let them cry, let them be anxious, let them show their emotions. This, I think it's very important, in perspective of healing them well.
Yeah, Dr. Vijay, you were saying something.
Yeah, one of the things I tell parents is to anticipate that it is going to be difficult. So once you anticipate, then you will not overreact to anger outbursts in the house or kids feeling anxious. You are already prepared. What I tell them is, when they are angry, it's okay, let them be angry for a little bit. Just sit with them, maybe hold their hand or put your arm around them if they allow you to. Otherwise, you can just sit there and wait for the anger to come and pass. And then you can talk about that when everyone is calm. Then you can talk about it and say, what is it that made you angry? And problem solve. If you feel like this is what you do. Take a deep breath. Take 10 deep breaths. Let's do some visualization. Let's do some guided relaxation. Teach the kids the stress management, anger management techniques. The other thing in a clinical setting, what I do is to actually make them write down the chatter in their heads. If they're angry, if they're anxious, I make them write all the things that are running in their heads. And then we take a look at how to reframe this so-called chatter in the head, or self-talk as it is called in cognitive behavior therapy. So teaching them deep breathing, relaxation, guided meditation, these kinds of techniques will help. And then looking at the chatter in the head will also help.
That's great. And I mean, this is such an important topic and such valuable advice from your all professional point of view and your experience. And it is 1 hour is really a very short amount of time, a small amount of time to go through some of this. And people still have a lot of questions. What I'll do is I'll just put in this last small question and then we'll just go for closing, since we respect your time. And if you all are very busy people, and thank you for taking time out and coming for this, and we can have another session later. So the last question is how to improve self-confidence and and please give some advice to avoid negative thoughts.
Well, that's always a fun one, right? Because I think we're always our biggest critics. So, when it comes to, I think, especially with kids, I mean, it's true with adults too. I mean, we get in our own heads all the time. We'll be the first ones to tell ourselves why we can't do something. And I'm a pretty big believer in the fact that emotions are just really, and thoughts too, many times are just really not accurate. And so along the way, we've got to, start, I think the first place to start with it when it comes to developing confidence is try to be able to separate out what we're thinking and feeling to kind of more of an objective reality. When I look at some studies that have been done, they talk about successful people, and it's not that they're necessarily like narcissistic, but they are just so incredibly optimistic, almost to like a fantasy level, that they just start believing it. That they tend to, if they have a story of their own lives or whatever the case is, and they have a hole to fill, they'll fill it with positive thoughts or a situation that just goes well. So when we talk about developing self-confidence, it's hard sometimes to look at our own bodies of work because we have enough failures in our history to kind of talk us out of anything. But when it comes to self-confidence, I think we have to just kind of look at it again from that growth mindset and say, all right, what have I been able to do? Like, I can clearly accomplish things. So how do I understand that whatever I want to do is not going to happen quickly? It's not going to be easy. Let's stay optimistic. Let's understand that there's going to be kind of shortfalls along the way. I'm a big believer in, I don't know how many of you have seen the movie The Martian or read the book, but one of my favorite premises of that entire story is the belief of the main character that you just have to solve the problem in front of you. And when you solve the problem in front of you, well, it's going to create more problems. You're going to that next step. And I think when you start doing that often enough, you start developing your own confidence that you're able to tackle what's in front of you. And when you do that and you start putting goals on top of it, now all of a sudden you could overcome those problems that are in the way of you getting to your goal. So to me, it's a whole bunch of a zillion tiny, tiny steps. And to just kind of look at it that way, not like, why am I not in this place or that place or doing this or doing that? How do we really just kind of get comfortable in ourselves of just kind of making those constant, positive steps little by little?
To piggyback on that, self-confidence is actually a byproduct. You don't already have self-confidence. For example, I know how to solve 2 + 2. Because I know how to solve it, I'm confident that I'll be able to solve it next time you ask me 2 + 2. Self-confidence doesn't spontaneously arise in a vacuum. As we feel more sense of mastery, as we learn more, we become confident that we can do that. So it's a self-confidence, self-esteem, sense of self, all these things are byproducts. What precedes that is our actions, our thoughts, how we deal with them. And a big part of developing self-confidence is how we define failure. Whether failure is seen as something terribly wrong with me, or failure is seen as inevitable, and am I able to glean something from that for myself? So this is where it's very important that parents don't go crazy when kids fail. It's important that kids fail. It's important that parents have failed so much, I cannot tell you. When I see people in my office, every parent has failed. So it's normal to fail. This is how we are made. So not to put, self-confidence ahead of action, to teach people to do that. And the other thing is, someone was asking about negative thoughts. The reason I have negative thoughts is someone has said something, or I myself have said something about me. And if I expect myself to be perfect, I will always have negative thoughts. If the environment expects me to be perfect, I will always have negative thoughts. If I understand that positive and negative thoughts are part of living and not give as much importance to them as what is in front of me, what I'm going to do, my actions. So it would be better if we focus on actions rather than the negative thoughts.
Well, I know it's a great discussion, and there's so much to talk, but I'm really respectful of your time to really conclude it in a timely fashion. I know you have some of you have other appointments, assignments. So what I'll do is, of course, if it's my way, I think the biggest culprit right now is social media and media that's continuously showing and displaying death and destruction, deaths due to COVID, destruction with this and that. But anyways, beyond our control. But thank you so much. This is amazing. A lot of good information, a lot of good experience. Let me just give you floor for if you can just say what you feel like just let's close it. Just what is the best way, or what your thoughts are to close this forum. We can start with Adam. You want to start?
Sure. Yeah, just to wrap up, I think it's just, to me, it's just about, first of all, just shaping expectation. I think if we're expecting everything to be great, we're going to create more problems for ourselves right now. It's a hard time. And so I think we've got to accept it, that it's a hard time. We didn't ask for it. It's beyond our control, but yet we all have to deal with it. So lamenting about how it's unfair is not going to help. The faster we can accept it, the faster we can adapt to it, the better off everyone's going to be. And so that would be kind of my 10,000 foot view of it. I did speak, like I said, at TEDx a few years ago. My talk, The Importance of Failure, spoke about, what was talked about earlier, and, the ability to, how do we keep a perspective that we're all not going to do well sometimes, and keep that healthy perspective on failure. And again, my book, Unwritten Rules, talks a lot about, for parents, how to engage in that in a healthy way also.
Thank you. Dr. Vijay?
During this COVID, it's important to understand that our kids live in two worlds. The world of the parental values, expectations, that's one, that we bring back from India, frozen in time from when we came here. And our kids, on the other hand, have 1 foot in the house and 1 foot out there in the larger context, in the larger world. And we want our kids pulling them this side, and the world is pulling them the other side. I really think it's very important as parents. We need to understand, we need to spend time, discuss, understand, so that we can do better for our kids. Thank you for having me here. And it's wonderful to hear all your opinions and input. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Vijay. Kamala?
Just to sum it up, we should allow kids and parents, let the kids make mistakes. And if they make a mistake, it's okay if they have made a mistake. Kids, make decisions, even if it's small, even if it's wrong. Not all the outcomes will be positive, but make decisions. And parents, please respect those decisions. Thirdly, parents, I know you all have expectations. We have expectations, but it's always recommended, let not our expectations go to our kids. If I wanted to be a doctor, I should not be forcing my child to become a doctor because I did not become so. So if that small boundary is maintained between kids and parents, it will go a long way in maintaining a healthy mental wellness for all our kids and teenagers. Thank you, Krishna. Thank you, everyone. It was great listening to all of you.
Thank you, Pramila, and thank you, Sanjeevni. Kamala?
Yes, I just want to say two things. and that is that I really want to stress to the youth that are on this call tonight and to the parents that stress is part of our world and it is not going away. We have got to help these kids learn how to deal with stress and anxiety in a healthy way, because it's not going to go away. And believe it or not, as the doctor said, stress is a normal part of life, and stress can also be a good thing for us too at certain times. It's when it's chronic that it becomes unhealthy. The second thing I'd like to say is that, and Adam really hits on this a lot when he gives his talk about the importance of failure. I believe that we all need to understand that failure is just a part of the journey on the road to greatness. We got to understand that we are going to fail at things, but we need to understand that those are learning opportunities and that we can learn from failure. And we got to stop being afraid of failure, because it's okay to fail. It's okay if we fail. We all do. But what matters is if you get back up off the floor and do something, or do you stay down on the floor? You know, no, it's okay to fail. We got to tell our youth that it's okay to fail. It's what you do after the failure, if you use it as a learning experience. And that's really the only two things, Krishna, that I'd like to say on our topic tonight.
Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, wonderful piece of advice. And thank you again, all of you. ICO would like to partner with you for whatever. I know we work with all of you in different things, different initiatives, and we'd like to further partner more and more. And let's have more serious discussions as we go along. And thank you, everyone who participated. Hope you got a lot of information out of it. We'll have a recording of this video that will be posted on our website and social media. So it'll be there. And then we'll plan for more. And we have a lot of other upcoming sessions in next few weeks. Just keep an eye on that. And Isha, do you have a list of some of them that we are coming up with handy? Or
Yeah. So today we did the dealing with stress, but then there's more about like small businesses, their challenges and opportunities, staying safe and healthy, just like about physical health. Then back to school, because I know that's like a really big topic right now. Keeping our families and communities safe, the importance of participation in census and civic participation, like our duty in taking part of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
well, thank you. I mean, those are some of them. And please suggest us more. Kamla, you were saying something? Or?
I just wanted to say, Krishna, we know that the school is going to announce their schedules on Monday, July 13th. We know that when that gets released, there's going to be some parents who are going to be happy and some parents who are going to be unhappy with that decision. The collaborative youth team, Krishna, if you would allow me, is hosting a forum, a youth forum on July 22nd. And the superintendents of the two schools will be on the forum, and they will be addressing all the issues around the back to school norms on July 22nd. And we would welcome all of you to be a part of that forum, Krishna and the ICO to be a part of that forum.
Definitely. And we would like to, we will, I mean, that's one of the hottest topics that's coming up. And there's a lot of anxiety in parents about it more than children. Children definitely want to go back, but parents have more anxiety on it, so we'll have to have more discussions, a lot of open talks. But thank you again. It was so wonderful again having all of you with us. Just one last quick thing. India Day, I know a lot of people look for India Day. This year, India Day, because of the governor restrictions, we cannot have it in its form. We cannot have the large gatherings, but we are looking at some alternates, and we will be announcing those. We are working with the city and other bodies, and we will be announcing them very soon as well. So thank you, panelists. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your advice. Thank you for your thoughts. Thank you all the attendees, all volunteers, and everyone. And we'll sign off from here, and we will see you soon in our next session. And keep an eye on our social media, on our Facebook page for details and website.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.